go. Good evening. This is the Village Council Public Workshop. The date is November 1st, 2023. The time is the 7:32. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by a posting on the bulletin board in Village Hall, by mail to the Ridgewood News, the Record, and by submission to all persons entitled to same as provided by law of a schedule, including the date and time of this meeting. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Perrin.
Here.
Councilmember Reynolds is not yet here. Councilmember Whites.
Here.
Councilmember Winograd.
Here.
And Mayor Vagianos.
Here. Will you all please join us in a salute to the flag? And now we'll begin with public comments.
Limited to 3 minutes per person.
I don't think so.
I don't think I hear you.
There's a button at the base of the mic. There you go. And it should...
Test.
light?
There you
Test.
Yep, good.
Christina Million, 530 West Saddle River Road. I'm here to address an agenda item from last week's Village Council meeting, the NJDEP Big Tree. I'm the resident that discovered the Big Tree program, notified the Village of Ridgewood about it, and nominated the Shedler Sugar Maple Tree. The transcripts from last week's meeting show that the account given by Councilmember Winograd, the village manager, and village attorney was a misrepresentation of what actually transpired. A picture was painted and insinuated that the Big Tree
could you slow down just a little bit so we can understand you better?
that the Big Tree Heritage Tree program, that the nomination was nefarious, and that is not true. Under the direction of the NJDEP and its website, anyone can nominate a big tree, not just the owner, as Councilmember Winograd incorrectly stated last week. Understanding the guidelines when completing the form, I indicated and highlighted that the owner, the Village of Ridgewood, had not completed the right of access agreement, the ROA, and I added the note in motion. I confidently added this line because on August 22nd, I wrote an email to the Village of Ridgewood representatives, Village Manager, Deputy Mayor Perrin, Councilmember Winograd, Green Ridgewood, Shade Tree Commission members, and the Friends of the Zabriskie Shedler House. I copied the NJDEP on this email, seeking permission and providing the village manager with the ROA document to sign and submit. But at the last meeting, at 2 hours and 36-minute marks, the village manager said he was never approached to sign a right of access agreement. On September 19th, NJDEP wrote to the village manager, copied me, congratulating us at Shedler that the sugar maple at Shedler is Ridgewood's first big tree. The village manager replied, "Thank you for sharing. I will send it to our shade tree division and share with the commission. While there is a plan for park development on the site, maintaining the special tree has and will continue to be a top priority." Councilmember Winograd replied, added Parks and Recs, the village arborist, and the village attorney on this September email. She requested that the tree wires be added to the report and the overall NJDEP report be updated, which serves to further validate their findings. This seems like authorization to proceed. This email chain with Big Tree and the Village of Ridgewood had a roughly 15 email exchanges between all of you from August to early October. As a resident observing these emails between elected and state officials with no objections, it's reasonable to assume that the Village of Ridgewood granted permission. On October 15th, NJDEP confirmed the sugar maple tree is a heritage tree. Sadly, despite these efforts, 2 days later, the village attorney submitted a legal demand that both the big tree and heritage tree status be rescinded, citing that the Village of Ridgewood never granted permission for NJDEP to access the historic property. But up to this point, as emails show, Councilmember Winograd and the village attorney on copy was directing NJDEP to add details to their official report. Why were these facts about rescinding the tree status not disclosed to residents last week or included in your statements to tap into? The facts remain that the sugar maple at Shedler is Ridgewood's first big tree, and it is a heritage tree. Will the council commit to signing the NJDEP ROA now? Will you add it to next week's agenda for consent? Thank you very much for considering.
Thank you, Christina.
Hi, my name is John Paquin, 371 East Glen Avenue.
John, if you could speak into the mic. Thank you so much.
You tell me how it is. How's it now? Is that good?
Better.
Get better?
You need to get close to
Too
it.
close. Oh, you know, I'm usually
Much
afraid
better.
of getting too close.
Much better.
That's usually my problem. All right, don't start the clock until we're
Nope.
done with the chit chat.
Nope,
Okay, thank
ready.
you. 3 minutes. All right.
Well, good.
Hi. So, who am I? John Paquin, 371 East Glen Avenue. Grew up in that house, the house my grandparents built in 1922 in what people now know as Old Paramus. I'm here too to talk about the Shedler property and also that great and wonderful tree. So, a couple of things. I think there's a lot of misrepresentation, misinformation floating around out there. I wanted to address three questions that I think people might not be fully informed about. That's this question about this Major Thomas Biles. Who was that guy? I want to talk about that. What's significant about that tree that we were just talking about? Why is it important? And what exactly happened here and what is here? There's a lot of questions floating around about Shedler. So quickly, I'm going to try to get this all done. Who was Major Thomas Biles? Major Thomas Biles was a major in the American Army that was assigned to the post in Paramus in 1780 after the British had attacked 2 weeks earlier across the Shedler property. He died 2 weeks later in another British attack. He died here in your town. He was an American patriot, and he died defending the country and the land that you sit on right now. He died right here in this town. That's who he was. He's a real person. I can show you the letter to Washington telling him about his injuries. You know how he died? He refused to surrender his sword. The British shot him after he refused to hand over his sword. Right here in your town. Really important. What an honor for that tree, huh? Okay, what about that? What's next? What's important about this tree we keep talking about? Well, it's certified as being 259 years old, right? It was born in 1764, before this country was born. If you've ever been to Gettysburg, has anyone ever been to battlefield of Gettysburg or maybe Lexington and Concord? They have these things they call witness trees. They're sacred, they're protected, they're guarded with people's lives because they witnessed the battle. That was 1864. We're talking 1780. This is a witness tree. So what did it witness? There seems to be a lot of debate about what exactly, how am I doing? Good. What happened at the Shedler property? We all know the kind of commonly held story, well, Washington slept here. Guess what? He really did. He really did. But there's like 3 different layers of history at Shedler, and it's really important to know. One is Washington stopped here more than once with 5,000 troops. The entire American army was stationed here, and that included the Shedler property. Make no mistake, okay? And that's easily proven. Beyond that, there were 200 to 300 American troops posted here for the duration of the war, almost the entire war for, what is that? 77 to 83, okay? One of the commanders during that time was Major Thomas Biles. So that's another thing. You've got 5,000 troops coming in. You've got 200 to 300 troops here all the time. It was a campground. It used to be known as Paramus Campground. How am I doing? I'm almost done. So it's a really important site, okay? A lot of history happened here. Men were stationed here. There were 8 engagements with the British Army. So that's what this tree witnessed. It's really important. The last thing I want to do is, and I wish I could read you some stuff. This is the village, the history of a village, the history of Ridgewood. What's on the cover? Paramus Church. Paramus wasn't in Paramus. Paramus was in Ridgewood. It's your history. If you go through here, guess what? Major Thomas Biles is right here. It talks about his death. So there's no denying that. There's no denying the campground that stood on what was called Paramus Campground on what's known as Paramus Plains. You drive right across it when you come down past the Dunkin' Donuts. So a lot of history here. It's really worth preserving. I would love to work with your historian to make sure we don't miss anything and we do all this right and really protect this sacred ground. And I think it's really important we honor Major Biles for his service in your town.
Thank you, John.
I'm sorry I ran over.
It's quite all right.
Oh, there's a lot of papers. Jacqueline Hone, 30 Carriage Lane. I just wanted to add, last week's meeting, yes, the village manager definitely said he was never approached to sign a right of access agreement. And I quote, he said, "And if I had been approached, I would have brought it to the village council." So now we know, as records show, the village manager was in fact approached, provided, and had the right of access to the big tree for months. So my question now would be, now that this council knows that, now that we have the records or can provide the records, will it be added to the workshop so that it could be put on the agenda for the next meeting to be voted on and proceed as the village manager described and as the village attorney also described needed in his notice for the big tree certification to go through? So it was rescinded
because of the protocol or process wasn't followed. But now that we know that the process can be followed and that a copy was actually provided months ago, will this council act accordingly and sign off and vote on that? The question was never whether this is a big tree, Ridgewood's first big tree, or if it was in fact a heritage tree. I believe what I heard and reading Mr. Rogers' correspondence is that it was based on a technicality that the ROA wasn't signed. So now that we know who was responsible for that ROA oversight, could that just be signed off on and get that title given back to Ridgewood? Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Anyone else? Okay, we're going to go to our hybrid access. Oh, excuse me. I'm so sorry. No, I'm good.
You're not good. Rohan De Silva, 521 West Saddle River Road. And the reason you're not good is because, as I brought up in the last meeting I attended, you apologized to me in private, but you didn't do so at the time I requested a formal apology. So you're not really a man of your word. You're probably not a man. Now,
Excuse me.
Point of order.
Excuse me.
Point of order.
did I
You will-
raise my voice?
Excuse me.
Point of order.
You will speak respectfully to this council. You will not wag your finger at us.
Did I wag a
And we will
finger?
hear everything
Did
you
I
have
wag
to
a
say.
finger?
But you, yes,
Did I
you
wag
did.
a finger?
You did.
What finger? You saw my finger move?
I did.
Oh,
I did. He did. Rohan, please, speak respectfully. You know we want to hear what you have to say.
no, you
but
don't want to
please
hear what I
speak
have to
respectfully.
say. You don't want to hear what I have to say.
Rohan?
Because every time I've come up here and spoken, you've treated me with disrespect.
Oh, no, I treat you with complete respect, Rohan.
Can I have an apology? You
Continue.
apologized to me in private, but everybody else didn't know you apologized to me.
Rohan,
So you made me look bad, accusing me of something, and everybody on the TV and on YouTube, that's memorialized forever, and you apologized to me in private, but you didn't apologize
Rohan,
to me.
please stop wagging your finger at us or at me. Please.
Okay,
I'm
you
asking
didn't
nicely.
apologize to me in public, which I asked for. I'm still waiting. Are you going to apologize, yes or no? This is what constitutes being a man of your word, not just sitting up there with appropriate anatomy. When you're a man of your word, you stand by. I accepted your apology then because you apologized as a man. You remember? You said, I'm going to come down and speak with you. And I said, don't condescend to come down. And you said, no, I meant physically. Okay, you came down, you shook my hand, and you apologized. I'm still waiting for the public one because all these people here didn't hear that. And I was accused of something that was incorrect. Am I getting that apology? I'm asking you, man to man. Am I getting that apology? I'm waiting for an answer.
Rohan, I don't like the tone of voice in which you speak to me, and I'm not going to respond to you when you speak to me in that tone of voice.
Okay, I'm not going, you are condescending to me every time I come here. You treat me like I'm an idiot. You smile in my face, and you do things that are not quite up to snuff. Okay? So I'm asking you again, you have an opportunity here, man to man. I'm not wagging my finger, there's no tone. I'm asking you a very direct question. Man to man,
Rohan, whatever conversation I have with you in private is in private.
but you chastised me in
This
front
is-
of everybody for an incorrect
Rohan.
statement.
This was a
Rohan, you're out of
public
line.
comment opportunity. You're able to make public comments.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Speak up, please.
I said this is public comment. You're able to make public comments. There's no requirement or obligation for anybody on the council or the dais to answer any question that they're asked. It's for public comment. So if you want to continue, it looks like you got a minute 6 left. You can continue making your comments.
Matt, you and I have known each other much, much longer than this. I know you're doing a job. But Matt, honestly, I make plenty of mistakes. When I make a mistake, I say I'm sorry, I look you in the eye, and I say I'm sorry. You can't chastise me because people have come up to me.
Nobody is chastised.
No, I was chastised.
Okay.
I was chastised. The mayor said, Rohan, he mentioned me by name. And he told me to be silent, as if I was speaking back there, and I was not speaking. So my comment, so when Matt, as the village attorney, tell me when I get a public apology, where it's read out to the entire town. When do I get that?
This is your public comment opportunity.
So I'm asking, so you're not ever going to tell me the answer to that?
I'm not going to answer, I don't know the answer to that question, so you can continue.
You're the attorney, Matt.
You got 13 seconds left, Rohan.
You're the five of you, including Matt, and I'll leave Keith out for the moment, are a very poor representation of the village of Ridgewood. You'll say things and you'll do things that are not consistent with the votes that you were given to come into power.
Thank you, Rohan.
Cynthia O'Keefe, 542 West Saddle River Road. I wanted to address a couple of points. First, safety. There was a gentleman, I think his name was Jerry, who lived on North Walnut, who came to talk about a public ordinance that was brought up at the October 11th meeting, I believe. And, you know, he was talking about his neighborhood, and it really resounded with me because it actually are, you know, the very same points that we are concerned about in the Shedler neighborhood. He talked about parking being a major inconvenience. It would be hard to navigate getting, you know, down the street, limited availability for people to park in front of their homes or navigate their driveways, would be a detriment to the traffic pattern. He said when there was a radar speed detector, that people did slow down, but marginally. I believe he said that there were 17 children that play and ride their bikes in that neighborhood. Having that parking would create an unsafe environment that would drastically change, you know, the landscape of that neighborhood. So with that being said, I would respectfully like to ask, and I know Keith had responded to me about a traffic and safety concern that I posted on Facebook, and I think you said contact the chief of police. So I wasn't sure, should we not be doing a study that would also include like other things like air pollution in that neighborhood, if things were to change? And, you know, you were talking about the bump outs that would be on West Saddle. Like, is that something I should pursue? Do I work with, you know, the village manager on that? I just wasn't sure, so I didn't take any action. So I just respectfully wanted to ask for more guidance on how to pursue that, because we are all concerned. I don't know, I think it was 2 weeks ago, there was an accident on Route 17. All the cars are coming down West Saddle. So very narrow road, causing lots of, you know, a traffic nightmare. And, you know, I understand someone was hit by a car, and I don't know what their status is, but it's so sad every time I hear that in Ridgewood or anywhere else. You know, we've already had 2 kids hit in our neighborhood. So I'm always mindful of how are we going to navigate this landscape. And, you know, I want it to be proactive, not reactive, is my point. So I would recommend a traffic safety study, perhaps, and also, you know, something on air pollution, so that the neighbors feel safe if there are changes to our neighborhood, that we have already addressed those concerns. Other places are doing it, so I think we could do it too. And then last but not least, you know, I wasn't involved in the heritage tree process, but just listening to it last week, it's like disappointing to me that we would, I mean, I hope we're not gonna rescind this based on a technicality. It sounds juvenile, in my opinion. So greater minds can prevail here, and let's embrace history. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Hi. Fretra De Silva, 521 West Saddle River Road. I just wanted to get up and say something because I understand, I listened to some of the recording from last week with regards to the Heritage Tree Award, and I also was disappointed because for me it seems as if we were trying to celebrate something in our town, and instead of celebrating it, it was taken away as something that was disgracefully done. I don't think that was at all the intent. And some of the statements that were made during that recording seemed to imply that it was the intent of the people that had applied for this to avoid the village. My understanding, after listening to the recording and talking to some of the neighbors, is that the council and members of staff have been copied and included in correspondence. Not that, there was action taken, but I don't think that people represented that they had authority. And I would hope that that can be made clear to the public, that people didn't check boxes that said, I have the authority to let you onto this land. My understanding is that specifically that wasn't done. In addition, it's my understanding that there was no secrecy or mantra of secrecy or communications without copying the village. And so I would hope that those kinds of statements and those kinds of inferences can be clarified, because it's from listening to the recording, it seems as if people were trying to do something bad when I think they were trying to do something positive. And that should be celebrated, I would hope, by the village. Thank you.
Thank you, Fritcha.
Good evening, Ann Loving, 342 South Irving Street. I can't even get my head around the fact that a person standing here approximately 30 feet away from you can't wag their finger. Is that going in to the document that you're writing that's going to control the public? We can't wag our finger? Really, you got to get a grip on this. It's ridiculous.
Thank you, Ann. Anyone else? With that, we'll go to our hybrid access. Susan, you're up.
Hello, Susan Ruan, 705 Kingsbridge Lane. I'm calling in regard this week, not about the footbridge, funny enough, but about traffic concerns in the town. I have attended the Citizens Advisory Safety Committee a few times, and a specific gentleman has been there repeatedly talking about the safety issues throughout the town. Two specific gentlemen, but one about the lighting at intersections for pedestrians crossing the street, another about the obstruction at the corners that cars can't see. I know both were still in discussion and stuff, and after yesterday's accident on Maple, I was hoping that people would start taking things a little bit more serious. So instead of being reactive, as Cynthia says, to become proactive and start exactly looking at all the intersections and roadways around the town, because Ridgewood's population keeps increasing, yet it still has stayed in a time warp with all the traffic flows. I mean, there's intersections that actually need lights that people, Linwood and Linwood and Northern Parkway needs a light. There's no excuse why there's not a light there, but yet we still have to take chances trying to move that across, and hopefully people don't get hit. Other places need lights for people to walk across. I do think, certain streets don't have stop signs or even yields. So you have new drivers going onto these roads, and it's not their fault if they get hit. Again, I'm not certain why Ridgewood has stayed in a time warp and not addressed safety issues as well as they could, considering it's trying to be proactive. And yesterday's accident just highlights the severity of the lack of response. And it's not an isolated incident. A few months ago, somebody was hit at Linwood in a horrific accident as well. These are occurring, and it needs to be addressed. And I think the advisory committee is there. However, I don't know if this village council needs to be more involved, because there has to be some changes that need to happen before more people die or or maimed by these serious accidents. All right, that was pretty much it. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Rurik, you're up.
Paul, and I can't be, this is Rurik Halaby, 1 Franklin Avenue. I cannot be with you in person. I'm with you in spirit. And I just wanted to offer you my full support for the great job you're doing. You are people of integrity. And anytime people attack you for that, just let it roll off your back like water off a duck's back. Anyway, you're doing a great job, and I just wanted to tell you that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rurik. Seeing no others, I'm now going to close public comment. But Rohan, I will respond to you now. Rohan, what happened that night was you were speaking to someone loudly please, just listen. Excuse me. You were speaking, and I was trying to quiet the crowd because people were speaking here and we were trying to get our business done. And I was looking at you and asking you to be quiet. You didn't hear me, and you weren't looking at me. So that's why I called your name. And when you told me later that it embarrassed you, I did apologize. And I will do that publicly now. I am sorry that I embarrassed you because you were speaking loudly, and there was no other way for me, to get your attention other than to call your name. And I feel badly that I embarrassed you in doing it. I really did, and I still do. And that's why I'm apologizing. No, public comment is over. And so I give you my public apology on that. Moving on.
I'd like to say several things.
Yes, by all means.
Sorry. So I'm going to go first, and I want to go slowly. And I don't have my phone or an electronic up here, so it's going to be on or about, and I might be off by that. One, there are 2 statuses of trees through the NJDEP. There is a big tree status, and then there's a heritage tree status. The big tree status has not been rescinded. It was just the heritage tree. And when I tell from my perspective, I am the shade tree liaison. There has been discussion of this program on and off, I would say, since last spring about both of these. Being new, I was not aware of either of the programs. I received a nomination from NJDP about the big tree status about a month ago, and it came with this lovely little report that I have up here. It was signed, and it very clearly is a big tree. At that point, I was a little concerned because there was information missing from the big tree thing, from my lay person. I probably know the least about trees up here. One, none of the cabling was identified, and the fact that we had fed that sugar maple $6,100 of tree food was not included in the report, and I felt that that was a missed opportunity. I believe I wrote that back. I don't know for sure what I wrote, but I said, okay, this seems something I should figure out. I did contact the NJDEP. We had a discussion. I said, my only concern with this is that the tree, because this is my watch, is ranked at a higher status than our local arborist had ranked it and our engineering department. So already, when I requested the records from the engineering department on the tree, there is a disparity where the state is saying the tree was in healthier condition than our local arborist. And I was a little concerned about it. There was also, as Christina will remember, It was issued to Ringwood instead of Ridgewood. It was a very polite, professional. There was no rescinding. I believe Pam, Lorraine, and I, and Shade Tree all felt that this was a good program. It's super exciting that a big tree would be on the map. We understood someone could nominate it. I wanted the discrepancies between our internal department, the food we had fed it, and the cabling to be addressed. Because if somebody read this report and like, this tree died on our watch, that would be very bad. So that was it. It was very clear to me that the next step for this tree would be Heritage Tree. We were not nominating it. There was a discussion that that would go through both Shade Tree and possibly HPC, but we don't have a program for that now. Much to my surprise, on or about 10 days ago, I received a note that the tree had been nominated and approved to Heritage Tree status. I wrote back to the whole group, and I think many residents were on it, and I asked questions. How did this happen? Why wasn't the village involved? I had spoken with the DEP on that Tuesday. There was nothing. And in fact, they realized very quickly by Monday morning that the village had been not included in the process. In addition to that, I'm gonna let Matt fill in, but boxes were checked that the ROA on the Heritage Tree had been filled out. We did not. At no point did anybody come to Shade Tree, come to HPC, come to the council. So at that point, we felt that this needed to be looked into because it's an important program. We have not rescinded the big tree status, and tomorrow, I believe Keith, Matt, me, members of the Shade Tree Commission, we are meeting with NJDEP to go over how to expand this program. Because one of the things I feel that's missing is private landowners can do this. And we should know more about both Big Tree and Heritage Tree. So I think, I just want to be clear, 2 separate programs. Big has not been rescinded. I still have concerns, and I'm happy they're on the record, that the evaluation of a tree is very important, and the village has taken a lot of steps with this tree, and I didn't feel the initial report reflected that. 2, we all have to be on board for the Heritage Tree status. It has meaningful implications, and I will say, I feel somewhat strongly, we have many, many local people that served both from the Revolution to now, and who could be mentioned in this. And I don't know how the determination was for this soldier, and I'm thankful for everyone's service, but we do feel that even in Shade Tree, the naming process needs to be more local and locally applied. So I think that's it, unless you want to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a few things. Again, Siobhan has pointed out the difference between a big tree application and a heritage tree application. All the comments that I made last week had to do with the heritage tree classification. The nomination petition for the heritage tree classification, which was something that no one here had seen, checked a box that said, has the owner, the village, concluded or completed the right of access agreement? And checked the box, yes. We hadn't done anything with it, we hadn't done it, but somebody did that. And doesn't matter who at this point in time, but that same person was also the person who decided to name the tree and provided the name to the DEP. So, and that person doesn't even live in the village. So we took it upon ourselves to understand just what this process was and how this occurred, and nobody ever said that the naming of the tree or the designation of the tree as a heritage tree was a bad thing. No one ever said that it wasn't a positive thing. What our issue was is that it was done without the authority and the participation of the village, and the village is the owner. And that was the problem. And once that was recognized, we asked for it to be rescinded, but once it was recognized by the DEP that the owner didn't participate, they decided to rescind it. So, again, our final comments on this tree, and my final comments last week, when I read into the record, and I'll just read it again. It has always been and continues to be the commitment of the village to maintain and protect this tree. Each iteration of plans for development has never suggested compromising this tree in any way. At a time deemed appropriate by the village, it will consider certifying this tree as a heritage tree having it named in honor of a distinguished and notable individual from Ridgewood's past. It may be Thomas Biles, it may be somebody else, but the owner is the village, it's a governmental entity, the village decides and makes the recommendation to DEP for that. Not an individual who has a favorite battle or a favorite idea about who it should be named after. It has to be cleared through the owner. You wouldn't want that to happen on your private property. It has to happen in a process, and that's why you have the process. Otherwise, it would be, complete chaos. So that's what we said last week. And again, it's all about the heritage tree.
Through you, Mayor, if I may. First of all, I think that this program that's sponsored by the DEP is an excellent program. I want to commend Councilmember Winograd for trying to promote this further in Ridgewood through the efforts of the Shade Tree Commission and other committees. But I want to clarify some of the statements that were made here tonight. I believe I acknowledged at last week's meeting, and I did not go back and listen to the tape between then and now. I know some of the audience members did. I did acknowledge that there were correspondence that went back and forth back in the summer relative to this attempt to designate the tree in both classifications. So much so that I actually communicated with our village clerk about what that process would look like and whether or not that would need to be taken to the village council, which Heather and I, after conferring with each other, decided that it would. And we even talked about adding it to an agenda in the fall. The trigger for both of us would have been the DEP coming back to us after the applications were made and asking us to sign a right of access agreement. So when I stated last week that I was never approached about signing a right of access agreement, what I meant was that the DEP, after the applications, which we now learned that there were 2, not just 1, but we did not know that there were 2 submissions, and I was never approached by the DEP to finalize the process or what I perceived to be the process, acknowledging I've never been through this designation before. I was waiting for the DEP to approach us back to sign off on the right of access agreement. And had that occurred, the village clerk and I had already talked about and discussed adding it to an agenda in September or October once we received that correspondence from the DEP that they were seeking our signature and that we should bring it to the village council. So that's what I meant when I made my remarks last week. With all due respect to Christina, and we email each other frequently, being approached by a resident to sign any document is not something that I am automatically going to sign. It either needs to come to village council. I was awaiting the DEP's response, and the response that we received was the approved designation, absent the right of access agreement. And I think that was the basis of the discussion last week. And I do want to reiterate Matt's comments that on one of those applications, it was represented that the right of access form had been signed by the village when in fact it had not. So I hope that clarifies the process from the manager's perspective.
I think it does, and we're not opposed to proceeding with this when we develop the park. There are lots of things we have to get done, and at that time, we're going to look at this, and I think Siobhan, who, by the way, did yeoman's work in figuring this whole thing out and helping us all to understand, had suggested that this is something that should probably go through our Shade Tree Commission next year, and I believe that that's what we will do. We're not going to do it now. It's premature. We're trying to do a lot of things there, as everyone knows. So we will get to this when we develop the park. Oh, go ahead.
I just want to say, because I want to be more tactile with the Shedler park development and the shade tree. I did say last week, and I want to be sincere, I felt this was a missed opportunity. Often Shedler and the development is, benchmarked against things like Lester Stable. And when I was a kid, Lester Stable was developed, and the whole town was involved in a million different ways. And I feel like this heritage tree status, as it becomes, was an opportunity for the Shedler neighborhood, the Shedler sugar tree to be on the map and talk to the community, because everybody loves these big trees. Since this, people have reached out. We have private property owners who want to nominate it. Our engineering department has looked into it. They're sending recommendations. It was a chance for it to be about all big trees and future heritage trees in Ridgewood. And I felt like, I have to say, it was embarrassing. You know, I had to call the NJDEP. I'm new here. I don't know what's going on. I had to come up to speed very quickly. And I do feel that we have this wonderfully committed Shade Tree Commission that we've had arguments of what should go there. This should go there. And heritage tree should interface with HPC because it's important. So, you know, the big tree status is there because it's a big tree. It does its big tree job. And we are going to move forward with expanding the program so it includes all trees, not just one tree. And I would like to be involved. I mean, I know that there's obviously issues across the board, but I'm sincere in that. I would love to be involved, and we would love to make this happen, and Shade Tree is going to take it up.
And with that, we're going to move on with our agenda. Let's go to our manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Speaking of trees, I am very happy to report that the plantings in the Central Business District continue. We are planting 37 new trees in the tree wells in the CBD. And in addition to that, we have another contracting firm working to plant 120 residential trees in the right-of-way throughout the village. So I again want to thank the Shade Tree Commission and our Parks and Recreation Department for all of their work in having these trees planted throughout the village during this planting season this fall. I hope everyone had a happy and safe Halloween. Just to talk about a few of the traffic concerns, yesterday was Halloween, so Monday night we did put out through both social media, email, and through a reverse 911 some safety advice for families as they were out trick-or-treating last evening. I will tell you that we did suffer a serious motor vehicle accident here on North Maple Avenue. But I also want to reiterate that that is one of the intersections where the flashing crosswalk lights have been installed, the strobe lights. As it's been reported to me, and this is preliminary because the investigation continues into that pedestrian accident, but it does not seem that the flashers were used when that individual was crossing the street. So we do want folks to take full advantage at those intersections where the pedestrian strobe light feature is already installed, to take advantage of that each and every time you're crossing a major street here in the village. To Susan's comments earlier during the public session, I also want to reiterate that I attended a recent CSAC meeting. Chief Lyons attended the last CSAC meeting, and we've been working closely with Councilmember Reynolds to address some of the concerns that the residents have brought forth at those meetings. We recently striped the intersection of Morningside and Hamilton so that we were shrinking or reducing the area where pedestrians need to cross and trying to narrow traffic flows in order to make that specific intersection safer. This week was facility tour week for myself. Had the opportunity to tour all the different areas within the public library on Monday. Yesterday, Director Calby from the Ridgewood Water Department took me around not only to the new building next to the library, but also to all of our different treatment plant and well sites throughout the village. It was very interesting to see the investment that we've already made in our infrastructure and sort of vision out what the investments in the PFAS treatment facilities will be by the end of 2026. Today, I had the opportunity to tour with Chief Judge and Director Kleinman, the OEM and Emergency Services building on Douglas Place. And tomorrow, I will be touring the water pollution facility with Chris Rudishauser and Jim Fells in that department. Few announcements very quickly. Next council chat is Saturday, November 4th from 9 to 11. We encourage people to make an appointment with the village clerk's office. However, walk-ins are welcome. The general election will take place this coming Tuesday, November 7th. Polls are open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. If you have any questions about where to vote or about your polling site, please feel free to call the village clerk's office and speak to Heather's staff. The annual 2023 leaf collection flyer has been mailed out. I showed that last week. Please be reminded to only place leaves at the curb line in the street for the placement dates that are listed for your area. If you have questions about that, you can also visit the village website for more information. All village departments and offices will be closed on Friday, November 10th in observance of Veterans Day. There'll be no garbage or recycling pickup on that day, and the recycling center will also be closed on Saturday, November 11th on Veterans Day itself. The recycling center will be open on Wednesday, November 8th from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. On Saturday, November 11th at 11 a.m., the American Legion, Post 53, will host a Veterans Day service at Memorial Park in Venice Square. All are invited to attend to honor those who have served in the armed forces to protect our liberties and freedoms. The Ridgewood Elder Dinner will take place on Sunday, November 12th from 3 to 5 p.m. at the Old Paramus Reformed Church. Registration is required through Community Pass. And the Ridgewood Guild's 14th annual Winterfest in Memorial Park at Van Ness Square will take place on Saturday, November 25th from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. And that concludes my report for tonight, Mayor.
Thank you, Keith. And now we'll go to our council reports. Evan?
Hey, thanks so much, Paul. Just three very quick things. So on Saturday, I got to tour the CBD with several volunteers from the Ridgewood Arts Council. Went door to door to all the businesses, reminding them of the Ridgewood Holiday Window Display Contest. For the businesses out there, please decorate your windows. We were giving out flyers with all the rules. We're going to be judging November 25th to 30th, and when I say we, I mean it's the Ridgewood Guild, the Chamber of Commerce, as well as the Ridgewood Arts Council, which I'm fortunate enough to be the Village Council liaison. We're going to announce the winners December 1st at the Chamber of Commerce downtown for the holidays. We're giving out gift cards to the winning businesses. As I've said before to the council, I actually don't really care who wins because we all win if everybody makes the downtown look that much nicer. So please, if you're a business owner, please participate. It's a great way to promote the Ridgewood Business District. This Saturday, council chat, as Keith mentioned, I'll be there. Lorraine will be there. Well, I look forward to catching up with Lorraine and hoping to hear from all of you, so please join us if you can. And then this Friday, I'm very much looking forward to attending the Ridgewood Library 100th anniversary celebration, which I'll report back on next Wednesday.
Thanks, Evan. Siobhan?
Sure, I only have one update because everything else has been covered. Earlier this week, I had the pleasure to tour Northwest Bergen Central Dispatch with Mayor Paul, and I want to thank both Thomas and Eric and all the staff there for really giving us a very detailed, thorough inside look of what goes on at 911 and dispatch, and we are incredibly lucky to have such hardworking professional people. It was amazing to see what they're doing with technology and customer service. So thank you to them, and for fellow members of the council who haven't toured it, I would strongly suggest you go there because it was very interesting, and I feel that every time we take a physical tour of a village operation, I feel better prepared to make a decision, and I feel incredibly lucky to live here because we have such wonderful services. That's it.
Thanks, Siobhan. Pam?
Good evening. The Green Team is considering exploring a relationship with Columbia University, my alma mater, to see if some graduate students can help us on a project to decarbonize, to come up with a plan to decarbonize our village to the extent possible with short-term and long-term goals. Also to come up with a sustainability roadmap outlining actions that they would recommend, and making comparisons with other towns, analyzing their initiatives, and making suggestions with regard to funding. So I think that's an interesting initiative that's in the offing. Green Ridgewood meets tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. in this building in the senior lounge on the first floor, and our village manager will be visiting for the first time with the group. The Chamber of Commerce had a wonderful event on Saturday. It was the Halloween festival celebration, and there was a pumpkin patch and an enormous parrot, I mean a real parrot, whose name is Romeo. There was a maze and costume contests for humans and dogs. It was a lot of fun in our central business district. So it seems to happen every year, and so maybe you can catch it next year. And I did want to remind everybody to please vote on Election Day or before. Thank you.
Thanks, Pam. I want to just reiterate what Siobhan talked about as far as our 911 centers is concerned. These are truly unsung heroes. When the fire department or the police department does their job and helps someone who's in deep trouble, we send cookies and cake and we thank them, and they deserve it. No one thanks them, and they don't mind. But know that they're there. These are people who are speaking to you in what is likely your darkest hour. I remember having one of those dark hours and calling them. And they took care of it. And they got the police department and the ambulance squad to my home. And I didn't thank them. And I feel badly about it, having met them now. This is a group of people who deal in such high-tension moments. They're like a group of air traffic controllers, and they are forever working to avoid serious collisions, and they take especially good care of us. This center is incredibly high-tech and state-of-the-art, and each station where somebody works has 8 screens. I barely know how to operate one screen. I was very impressed with this operation. I was even more impressed with the people who work there. And I want to personally thank them for the 24/7, 365 work that they do for us. They are always there, ready to answer the call. So know that when you are calling the police or the fire department or for an ambulance, you're calling them. They're the ones who are taking care of us, every single one of us, every single day. So I just had to say that because I was moved by my tour. And as far as voting is concerned, today, Heather and I gave a tour to the 3rd grade class at Orchard School. And they came in here and they sat in these seats and they had such a good day, but not as good a day as Heather and I did. And we talked about voting. And they pledged to us that once they turn 18, they will vote in every election for the rest of their lives. And I urge everyone here to do the same. It is very likely that in this election on Tuesday, more than half of us will not vote. So for those who have fought and died for this right, for this responsibility, please do it for them. Vote, because most of the world can't. And they're fighting all around the world just for that opportunity to vote, the one that we take for granted. So I urge you and I beg you, let Ridgewood be a beacon. Show us that 90% or more, it should be 100% of all of us will go out on Tuesday and vote. Thank you all. And with that, we will move on to our agenda.
Thank you,
Keith.
Mayor. Tonight we have one presentation, and it's from Millennium Strategies, which is a grant writing firm that the village actually previously was engaged with. And I'd like to ask Gavi if she could bring our presenters on through the Zoom link.
Keith?
Yes. Ed?
We are here.
Okay. I'd like to introduce to the Village Council Ed Farmer, the principal of Millennium Strategies, and Katie Kocher, who is the Deputy Director of Research and Special Projects.
Thank you, Keith, and thank you to the mayor and council for allowing us a few minutes to talk about Millennium Strategies tonight. And Katie will back me up for anything that I miss, and both of us will be available to answer any questions you may have. Millennium Strategies has presented a proposal to the council, and we are a grant writing, research, and consulting firm. We're based in Morristown, New Jersey, and we represent clients. Sorry, I saw a little note there. We represent clients, governmental entities in New Jersey and New York and Pennsylvania, and a little bit in other parts of the country. In New Jersey, we represent over 100 municipalities, and we perform 2 different types of service. Our consulting service is for communities larger communities and older suburban communities that have like cities like Patterson and Passaic. And that consulting service are for clients that we believe will submit anywhere from 15 to, and in Patterson's case, up to 60 grants a year. And we give them an exhaustive full service consulting service. And then we have a portal, service for communities that either have the capacity and have written grants before. Ridgewood's a great example of this. And we believe this gives you access through a portal to all of our research information. So we have a 2-person team that does nothing all day but research and find opportunities and then go read them for our clients and put together synopsis of the grants that gives you the who, what, when, and where, and all the key things that you need in order to get your first blush at what the grant could do and how it could impact Millennium. We also, with this service, do provide some consulting service with that, and we do have Katie and her team available. If you see an opportunity on our portal that you find interesting, you can call them and kind of talk over and see if this would be a good fit for Ridgewood. Many of our clients that have similar demographics, such as Berkeley Heights, and every community is unique, but they utilize us also on a case-by-case basis. They can contract with us to write the grants. A lot of our communities, like Franklin Lakes, they strictly use it for the most part. We've been with them. They were our first portal client 5 or 6 years ago. And for the most part, they use it as a research tool and write the grants in-house. We occasionally have written grants as needed for them. So there are many different ways to utilize this service. And I think based on our previous experience with Ridgewood and the fact that there are certain departments that are aggressive with ascertaining grants and are very good at it, this is a really good supplement. And we have found that in communities that they find this tool, they'll never miss a grant again. And we provide access to this, training on how to use it, though it's extremely easy. But we do have, and you have a team that you can utilize to find, to go over these grant opportunities with you. And Katie, I don't know if there's anything you'd like to add?
Not too much. I would just say, every municipality is different. So we will work with you to customize your experience based on, however you'd like to use us. So we look forward to potentially working with you.
So Mayor, if I may, if I call the council's attention to page 3 of the proposal that was submitted by Millennium, it outlines under the scope of services 4 different services that would be provided to the village. One is the establishment of a user platform to research the grant portal, which will help everyone. It'll allow all of our department directors and their staff to go in to see and remain current on all of the grants that come available, not just through other government entities, but even through private grants that become available to public entities. Service 2 is access to detailed grant summaries. Service 3 is consultation on available grant opportunities. And those 3 services are contained in the fee schedule below for a nominal flat fee of $4,800. The service 4, which is project support, would be done and billed hourly. So if we did want to engage Millennium on helping us prepare a specific grant application, we would have the luxury of being able to do that as well. What I like about this setup, and in both of my other municipalities where I served previously, we had the comprehensive plan, which was significantly more expensive than the proposal you're looking at tonight. But we do have an in-house village engineer Chris's department does write the majority of our DOT grants, but what this portal will allow Chris's staff to do is be able to go in and monitor any additional or new grants that become available, and then they would be able to write those in-house, but using the information that Millennium provides. Same thing with fire. We have a specific grant writer that specializes in writing firefighter grants, but as new grants become available, Chief Judge will be able to share that and utilize either Millennium or utilize the traditional grant writer that we use. Where I think this is going to be most successful, however, is the fact that there are certain departments that do not have grant writers or are not writing grants in-house. Parks and Recreation comes to mind first and foremost. There are a lot of Parks and Recreation grants out there that we want to take advantage of. I think Nan and I have already discussed what our grant applications would be for 2024 grant round with Bergen County Open Space Trust Fund. That's a place where Millennium Strategies can really help us, and they have extensive experience writing grants through the Bergen County Open Space Trust Fund. So it's my recommendation tonight to move forward with this proposal to the council. And if you have any questions for myself, for Ed, or for Katie, we're here to answer any questions that you might have.
So is the 4,800 in our budget already? Where's the money coming from?
We have the funding available for this, and quite frankly, I think the way we would structure the contract, Councilman, is to start it on January 1st, so we'd start the new year with Millennium. But Bob has indicated to me that we have capacity for this.
So I think it's great. Thank you for your presentation. I am just wondering, because I'm new here, how long was the prior contract? Because we won't have a learning curve, right?
Ed, do you have any idea when you were contracted with Ridgewood previously?
2018 and 2019. And we're based in Morristown. We represent a good amount of communities throughout Bergen County. And not only the same people, it just so happens that the same people who were assigned to that, to Ridgewood in 2018, 2019 are still with the firm. So we have a tremendous amount of experience, and we feel at the time that that one of the reasons we weren't as successful as we'd like to be is because we kind of found out that there was a tremendous amount of grant writing capacity within the department, and we just weren't utilized as much as we would be in some of our other communities. So I think we wrote, for that flat fee, we are more than, willing to write as many grants as possible. And at the time, I think in 2019, our last year with Ridgewood, we were authorized to write 7 grants. And of those 7 grants, there were also smaller grants as well. Some of them were awarded, but it was challenging to justify utilizing us if we weren't being utilized. So we think that our tenure here and learning about Ridgewood, that this is a much better fit for the service, because you do have some professionals that are very good at what they do in certain departments. This will back up what they already do and make sure that we can have every member of council can have a log on if you like, so you can have access to this information. You can also utilize the portal in a research capacity. If you're interested in specific kind of historical preservation grants or park and recreation grants, you can search by category, so you can plan for your year as to what type of projects and programs are being funded. About 90% of all grants cycle on an annual basis. So you can really see we give you a historical perspective in the portal as well. And then obviously everything that comes out, you're going to get in, as close to real time as possible. So we really think, based on our past experience, there will be no learning curve, and we can really jump on board and hopefully assist what you're already doing, back up what you're already doing well, and expand upon that as well.
So Keith, is this a 1-year deal?
We would enter into a 1-year contract, and then we would evaluate it after the first year to see what our return on investment was.
Yeah, you're reading my mind. I am supportive. Before I was on the council, I had a hand in writing 2 grants, neither one of which was ultimately accepted. It is a tremendous amount of work, and the consultation probably would have helped me. With that said, I'll let you know what I'm going to say to you a year from now. I'm going to ask you, hey, how much money did you get us? And if the answer is none or very little, you won't have my support. But certainly right now, I think it's a very valid endeavor.
And let me say this, Mayor, the success or failure for a municipality dealing with a grant firm is how aggressive the municipality is. And if we're out there turning over every stone, looking to find grant opportunities, finding ways to be creative about funding priorities and initiatives that we have in the village, and then finding funding sources that we can be creative with to accomplish those goals. That's really where the mindset needs to be. And I think that's what we can accomplish if we work with Millennium next year.
Questions? Comments? It sounds like we're going to be entering into a one-year deal with you, Ed, and we're looking
That would
forward
be
to it.
wonderful, and we look forward to it. As the councilman said, our business is very black and white. Return on investment is, we want to be with you for a long time, but we understand that we are judged on return on investment. So that is our goal for, is to do everything we can in the next 12 months to be an asset. And, and being an asset to you means bringing in money to Ridgewood. So that is our goal.
Great. We're looking forward to working with you. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Be well.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Katie. Okay, Mayor, we'll move on to discussion under Ridgewood Water. The first proposal sent over by Director Calby is the Valley View Reservoir Improvements Recommendation of Contract Award. October 11th, we received 3 bids out of the 8 that were picked up. T&M, who's our consulting engineer on this project, recommends that we reject the bid, which was not the responsive low bidder, and to award the total of bid to the identified responsible low bidder, D&N Tanks, in the amount of $391,400. This project, again, is for the Valley View Reservoir, which is a $1.25 million gallon capacity pre-stressed concrete storage tank located in Ridgewood. I actually had the opportunity to visit it yesterday. The improvement work includes the interior and exterior cleaning, concrete repairs if required, miscellaneous improvements to comply with OSHA requirements. The rehabilitation will prolong the life of the tank and improve water quality. Improvements will also include repairs to the leaky vault hatch and provisions for future security camera installation. And this money is available through the Ridgewood Water capital budget. Any questions?
No, I just wanted to clarify for the record that we would not be awarding the contract to the apparent low bidder because that bidder didn't have sufficient experience.
Correct.
That's what it was said. There was a requirement that they have references for 3 prior contracts.
Right.
And they didn't have it.
Everybody good?
So the responsible low bidder becomes D&N.
Great.
Okay. All right. Next up under water is the Ridgewood Water Pump House floodproofing. This is a recommendation of contract award. This project includes floodproofing improvements at Ridgewood Water's Linwood Pump House and East Saddle River Pump House located in the village. Both pump houses are within the floodplain and have had flooding events resulting in about 3 to 4 feet of water in the building, causing damage to equipment. The project will include floodproofing doors and sealing building penetrations to prevent future flood events from penetrating into the building, as well as building carpentry and masonry repairs inclusive of interior painting. The RSC, which is the architect on this job, recommends the award to the low bidder, VNL Incorporated, in the amount of $230,940. Of that, $57,950 will be covered by FEMA mitigation funds, and this money too is available in a water capital account.
All good?
Okay.
Great.
Could I just ask a question?
Sure.
Because it's capital. Why are we billing it under 2 separate capital accounts? Is it just to balance the cost?
I think it depends on how those bond ordinances were worded, and I can't specifically answer that because there are so many when it comes to the water side of things here in the village with all the investments that are being made. I can get a solid answer as to why we're splitting it amongst the accounts, but either way, it's still be coming out of the bond ordinance.
Yeah, no, I've never seen that before.
Okay. Next item is the Greenwood Avenue Bridge Project, Midland Park. On March 9th of this year, the Village Council approved a resolution authorizing the agreement between Ridgewood Water and the County of Bergen. The approval authorized an estimated cost of $100,000 for the relocation of a water main running under the Greenwood Avenue County Bridge in Midland Park. It's part of the county's bridge replacement project. At this time, there's an additional $41,158.05, which is requested to amend the agreement for actual costs of the water main relocation and for an emergency sanitary sewer repair performed by the county's contractor. And again, this money too is available through one of the water capital budget accounts. Any questions?
Everybody good?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, next item is the Hunter Research Stage 2 Archaeological Survey. Back on March 8th of this year, Ridgewood Water awarded a contract for professional services to Hunter Research to complete a Stage 1 archaeological study. The Stage 1 survey was completed successfully, and the results and findings require a Stage 2 survey. The survey work will be located at the site of the proposed PFAS treatment facility at Cedar Hill Wellfield in the township of Wyckoff. The work is necessary to meet DEP approval for construction of the facility. Total amount, $45,144.40, and again, available through a Ridgewood Water capital budget bond ordinance. Any
Everybody
questions?
good?
Okay.
Great.
All right. Move on to parking. We have recommendation from our Chief Financial Officer, Parking Utility Director, Robert Rooney, to extend the Park Mobile contract. Again, I want to remind the council that the village incurs no expense with this, and he is recommending a 3-year extension with a 1-year option of our current agreement.
Everybody good?
Do I understand correctly that Park Mobile could, during that 3-year period plus one, increase the transaction fee?
I believe that they can, but I do believe that the village needs to be put on notice and may possibly need consent. But I can find out from Bob how exactly that
Yeah.
process works out.
Mhm.
Okay?
So, don't be mad at me, everyone, but this does beg a question of, the duality of payment in town for me. I'm imagining Park Mobile, if we did more volume with them, the transaction costs would go down. And we still, we have the kiosks, which leave a lot of elderly people frustrated because of the glare and the mechanisms, not to generalize. My mom, I should say, and all her friends. And that this is, the transaction fee is very high. So I'm wondering, can we see if there's a sliding scale that, the transactions, typically with credit cards and processing, the more volume we do, the more this would go down. And while it's no fee to us, it does make parking for the incidental more expensive to the general user, which is a constant complaint. So, I'm all for moving it forward. We run 2 systems now, but I think longer term, and I kind of want somebody else to say something about this, I think we have to look at the most efficient. The kiosks, I'm sure you all hear the complaints, and that if we could get the transaction costs down and this is more automated, maybe we begin to discuss, not this year, not tomorrow, but more of aligning where the transactions go.
I can speak to Bob about that.
Okay.
Certainly worth looking into.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, next item is under budget. This is the upgrading of our call boxes. As you'll remember, we did have a potential emergency situation at Graydon Pool this summer. It was determined that not all of the call boxes were functioning completely properly. We asked the police department and the parks department to do a comprehensive review of all the call boxes, and they are recommending the upgrade and to engage with Access 2N Intercom Call Boxes Company. These boxes will be outside and available 24 hours a day. They'll have a direct 911 dial to central dispatch, as well as alerting the police desk here in Village Hall. The box will also allow for direct communication from the police desk via the call box along with video. We're going to start this initiative with Village Hall and the firehouse to start, and Lieutenant Chuck and Chief Lyons are recommending that this be awarded through a government contract, and the funds are available in the general account. Questions?
Everybody good?
Yep.
Great.
Okay, next item is a carryover from the last meeting where we talked about the change in billing for for ambulance response here in the village. This is the recommendation from Chris Rudershauser and Chief Judge to move to a new vendor for billing basic life support services for ambulance calls. We received bids back on October 25th. We had one bidder. Their proposal was attached to your packet tonight. It was quite extensive, and they're recommending that we move forward with this low bid.
Everybody good?
Yes.
Great.
Okay. Next item is renewing the contract with Valley Community Health. They've submitted their 2024 community program service bid. This is for nursing services. Cost to the village is not to exceed $12,221.70. This is a zero increase over the past 3 years, and a portion of that $12,000 will be covered by the OLPH grant. Any objection?
Everybody good? Great.
Okay. Next is a renewal, the Health Department to provide services for cosmetology inspections to the Borough of Norwood. This is a continuing contract that Norwood and the village are both interested in renewing.
All good?
Okay.
Yes.
Let's go.
Next one, I'm happy to report that we did receive one bid on Thursday, October 12th. For the utilization of the train station baggage building in the Central Business District. We had 7 people pick up plans. The village received one bid in return, and we are recommending that the bid be awarded to the low sold bidder by Triplex Industries of South Amboy. Any objection?
Keith, what are they going to do there?
Office space.
Exactly.
What's that?
Office space.
Office space.
Mhm.
Okay.
All right.
So I just want to take a minute, and I think Evan and I will both want to say this. When we took our office, we asked for a list from Bob Rooney of all space that the village owned for the potential of revenue and a prior revenue generating list. This space has been vacant for a long time, and I want to thank Heather because she took Matt and engineering and I on a tour, and I just feel that this is so great. And the space will be, while it's not part of the actual streetscape, it's on the train side, there'll be people in there, there'll be additional foot traffic, it'll soften tax dollars, and I'm really grateful. I know that we were really persistent, and I'm happy that Evan and I looked at this, and I'm really happy this is going to be, filled. It's been years since Ridgewood Taxi left, and I think it's so great. So I just want to say
And
thank you.
just to piggyback off those comments, November 22nd, we'll be receiving bids back for the concession on the west side, the old coffee concession on the opposite side of the track. So we're hopeful, and we have had some interest expressed in that space. So we're hopeful that by Q1 of next year, we'll have both of these areas occupied over by the train station.
And that's even better, because if any commuters are listening, that means you can get coffee in the morning, and again, thank you, Heather, for starting it, Matt for going on the foot tour, and Keith for finishing it. It's so great.
Okay.
One question, is that with two parking spaces or without?
I believe it's with.
Because here on the proposal, it's without.
I'll confirm with Chris tomorrow.
Yeah,
All right?
thank you. And is it it's the downstairs as well as the upstairs,
Yes,
right?
both levels. Okay, the next issue also comes out of the Health Department. The New Jersey Legislature imposed a law requiring lead inspections. And I do want to thank Heather. She took the lead on this sort of during transition, along with Dawn from the Health Department. But Dawn is recommending that we award a contract to Lou Environmental Services, LLC. They will provide the municipality access to a portal that contains all real-time data and record keeping, which will be in compliance with the statute that I mentioned previously. We did receive 3 quotes. Lou Corporation was the lowest quote that would be passed on to the entity being inspected. And that's a $250 fee for the inspection. Again, between the building department, fire prevention, and the health department, they will work collaboratively with Lou. If the council is inclined to award this contract, we'll have a kickoff meeting with them in order to make sure that the village is in compliant with statute. Okay. Next item, and this actually came from the discussion last week about the potential cell antennas being proposed here at Village Hall, but this would allow the council to re-up their contract with Peter Lupo, who was the professional services provider mentioned last week. And again, this is at no cost to the village. all of these fees, based on this proposal, would be assigned to the carrier. Okay, good. Okay, next item is to rescind and replace Resolution 23306, which is the archaeological survey that was conducted at the Shedler property by Richard Grubb and Associates. There was a clerical error, mathematical error in the resolution. The correct contract amount is $35,610. In the resolution, it's stated $35,410. So we need to make that change. Thank you, Heather, for catching that too. Okay. Next item is under policy is amendment to zoning ordinance to allow us to include uses for microbreweries and brew pubs. And Gavi, if you're listening in the back, if you could invite John Barry into our meeting.
And before we begin this, I'm going to recuse myself from this matter, as I know that there's a gentleman who's been scoping around town to open a brew pub or microbrewery. He has looked at a piece of property that I own, so I'm recusing myself and not engaging in the discussion.
So we'll just wait for John Barry to join us. Here he is.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can, John. Thank you.
Right.
So, John, the council's in receipt of your October 26th memorandum on this issue.
Yep. So,
she's taking care of it.
would you like me to begin?
There you go, John.
There you go.
Welcome.
You good? Great.
Yeah. So, John, we're in, the council's in receipt of your October 26th memo. Do you just want to take us through the legislation that was passed and how this has been implemented by the state? And then you can walk through the memo between the difference between the microbrewery and the brew pub, and then talk about the zoning aspects of it.
Sure. So it's been a number of years now since the state amended some of the alcohol beverage regulations to permit small-scale brewing operations under two specific classes of license that are outside of the typical municipal cap for alcohol beverage licenses, whether on-premise or off-premise. So the regulations that I cited here under the New Jersey statute, section 33:1.10, includes definitions for two different types of facilities. One of those is a limited brewery, which is what those of us who have been to different microbrewery operations around the state would most commonly think of, I think, at this point. They're the manufacturing facilities that typically have a tasting room, a retail component, and that are specifically prohibited from food service on site. There are also a number of regulations that, rules that have been put into place outside of the statute specifically that govern the number of events that those types of facilities can hold during a given year. And those rules have changed, gone back and forth a little bit over the 15 or so years since these types of licenses were created. The second type is what we would think of as a brew pub. There are fewer of these in the state, but there are maybe 8 or 10 at this point operating. They are a similar manufacturing component where the beer is brewed, produced on site, but it's operated in conjunction with a restaurant, and also the license holder has to be an entity that holds a plenary consumption license in the municipality. So that essentially goes along with a full service liquor license. It becomes a kind of an add-on in that sense. So both types of businesses exist at different scales. Brew pub is really a restaurant scale kind of business, so you have different size restaurants. But the microbrewery, you do see them in downtown areas. There's only a handful in Bergen County. Just from talking to folks around town, it seems that most people are familiar with a relatively recent opening of a facility in Westwood. It's been there maybe 2 years or so now, year and a half. And that would be very similar to what you might expect to see in Ridgewood at some of the different properties that could support this kind of use. In some places, they take on a more industrial scale. You find them in industrial parks or in industrial areas. And those, as you get bigger, they get more focused on distribution and so forth, and less focused on just having a small storefront. But with the nature of space downtown, I think, and in the B1 and B2 zones in particular, the size of the buildings, the size of the properties would lend themselves to a smaller operation, most likely. So in discussing with Keith and with Matt and others about the appropriate approach here, we talked about the possibility of creating conditions that might be restrictive for location where these uses could be permitted, and settled on a proposal that the B1 zone and the B2 zone, which encompass the downtown area, as well as the C zone, that the C commercial zone that extends a little bit north of downtown and has a few larger properties, that those three locations within the village would be appropriate for these types of use. I think generally speaking, where they've opened up around the state, they've been successful in complementing downtowns and commercial areas. They draw foot traffic in, they draw folks from different places, and especially the limited brewery or microbrewery license, because by their very nature, they're not allowed to serve food. They tend to exist in a really positive, complementary sense with local restaurants, because they're often available for takeout, or you go to the brewery, you go to the restaurant, vice versa. And certainly having folks downtown visiting one establishment leads to another establishment. So I think the downtown B1, B2 districts would certainly lend themselves well to the use, and it would be a positive addition to the permitted uses under the zoning district. And the C zone is as well as a complementary location that's not far from downtown that could extend some of the walking and foot traffic a little bit further north. That sums up everything that I've got for you this evening, but happy to go through any questions anyone has.
So actually, I had a question for Matt on this. First of all, let me just say it's nice to have a topic that I consider myself a subject matter expert on. And very much appreciate the ability to utilize my skill, and look forward to doing some more research. With that said, Matt, can you talk to me what steps, if we approve this, what steps would somebody have to go to in order to get actual approval to open up something downtown? I agree with everything the gentleman said. This sounds like a great idea. My only concern is just making sure that we're not opening up an industrial-sized brewery in Ridgewood. To me, something that fits size-wise, that fits the downtown, makes a ton of sense. I think your point about helping surrounding restaurants is an excellent one. I just want to make sure that we're not opening something that's gargantuan and huge with something that fits the downtown. I want to make sure there's some sort of check on that before we go further.
Well, we've had discussion about the different properties and what might be the type of facility that would be used for either the brew pub or the microbrewery. In our B1 and B2, there's no major facilities, no major properties that could, necessarily handle something that big, or something that might be oversized. I think when you look at the existing properties that are in those areas, they would be very conducive to the microbrewery type, rather than the brew pub, which has got the facility and the restaurant and that type of thing. I don't know, everybody's idea about what's too big and what's not too big is different, but I think containing it to the B1 and B2 in that regard, and that primarily is really what it's about. The C zone was, not necessarily an afterthought, but when you think about the area that's down on the northern end of Chestnut, which is part of the C zone, that could be conducive to this type of a use as well. So, again, a microbrewery is something that doesn't have the plenary liquor license, so you would expect that to be in a small facility. The other one would, a brew pub is something that would need a restaurant and a plenary license. And we want to permit that, want to, kind of welcome the thought of it and see if that may be something that comes in. But again, the facilities really are kind of controlled by the fact that the use is going to need a certain size. And you're not going to get an Anheuser-Busch brewery in here or something like that that's going to overpower everything that's in the area. You're looking at smaller buildings, smaller lots. And so it's kind of controlled by that.
And I would just point out, too, that a lot of this is controlled by statute. So when we were working with John to craft this ordinance, we did want to reference the statute for fear that because it is new, if the statute's changed in Trenton, we didn't want to have to come back and administratively change our ordinance in response to that. So a lot of this is dependent on the existing statute. So if that changes, the rules change statewide, they would change here in Ridgewood without the council having to take any future action.
I will just add, though, I'm familiar with the location you referenced in Westwood, and it's fantastic. That type of business would look wonderful in downtown Ridgewood.
So we should all go on a field trip?
I think so. I think so. Can we get the village to pay for it? It's an official expense, right?
Do you want to move
Evan,
up
do you
for a
want to repeat your last sentence or so?
It's okay. Everything's on YouTube anyway. So.
So I have a couple questions. Can you hear me, Rohan? Okay, good. Do they have to go together, microbrewery and brew pub?
No, they do not.
Okay. And I should have started, John, this is awesome. Your one pager was excellent, and I agree with everything you said in your presentation. I think this would be a perfect fit for Ridgewood. When we go down the shore, it has really revitalized a lot of main streets. There's definitely more of a commitment down there to microbreweries so they don't infringe on existing restaurant business, and I like that idea. I just didn't know if the state statute. So I think this is wonderful. I think it will add much-needed foot traffic. It's novel. It's super Ridgewood. And I would love to move forward with just the microbrewery aspect of it. I just wasn't sure if there was a reason why we included both of them. And I'd be open to both of them. I just don't know if we need competition
So
for the existing restaurants.
They're both built into the statute.
Okay, then that's the question. I would like to say I love the brewery side more than the pub side.
And keep in mind, if I may, John, you know, and Heather and I had this conversation at length, the brew pub would require someone to
be a
purchase a
holder, right.
license. So I believe we have 5 that are occupied, Heather, and 1 that's pocketed, right? So, but they would have to
Yeah.
negotiate a deal to purchase one of the existing licenses in order to move forward with that second use.
Great, I think it's wonderful. And by the way, my family, when they said, this might be the most exciting thing you've discussed all year.
I'll just add an anecdote that I happened to be in Westwood to buy fabric, and the microbrewery was closed. So for lunch, I went 2 doors down to the pizza parlor, and I said, by the way, how's that microbrewery working out for you? And the guy behind the counter said, oh, Saturday is a beast. So it's really helping the local restaurants there.
And through you, Deputy Mayor, in doing our due diligence here, I did reach out to both the Ridgewood Chamber of Commerce and the Ridgewood Guild to sort of take the temperature on how they and their membership would feel about this, and both came back very supportive. Evan mentioned that he had been to the microbrewery in Westwood, which is open for business now, and then I joked with him about the fact that we should all take a field trip there.
So I know Paul is recused on this matter. I don't know, it sounds like we have, it sounds like we.
Just move it this way.
I know Paul is recused. It sounds like we have consensus. So I don't know if there's anything
To move forward, to introduce, everybody's comfortable with that?
Next week.
Okay.
It gets introduced next week.
Okay. Thank you, John. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Okay, our next ordinance amendment proposal is for cat licensing. The current cat licensing ordinance, as it reads, does not jive necessarily with our licensing system. So on page 2 of the memo, Dawn has outlined the language to be removed and the language to be added. It much in part has to do with the timeframes of the licenses. So we'd like to move forward with introduction on that next week as well.
Everybody good?
Yes.
Okay, under operations, the municipality has completed the 2023 Municipal Best Practices Inventory. I want to thank Bob Bruni and all of our department directors for working with Bob to properly fill out the form. I am pleased to say that we are nowhere near in jeopardy of losing any aid and that we've answered the great majority of the questions in accordance with how the state would prefer they be answered. The council just needs to acknowledge that they've reviewed this document, and then we can move forward with submitting it by the Friday deadline.
Great. Everybody good? Has everyone reviewed this?
Okay.
Good.
Items.
And I want to commend the staff for making sure that we are in compliance.
Right.
Really important, and we have great staff here, so we're very fortunate.
Items 2 and 3 are both endorsements of community development block grant applications, one for Family Promise and the other for Share Incorporated.
Good.
Okay. And finally, item 4 is the declaration of surplus property. Believe it or not, we have 5 surplus inoperable sanitation trucks, which in fact is a challenge at this point. And with lead times on ordering new trucks being quite long right now just because of supply and demand. Sean Hanlon and his crew at Sanitation are working through that, but we do have 5 trucks that are not repairable and are ready to be put out for auction.
I have no objection to surplusing these inoperable trucks, but if we can't purchase trucks timely, can we lease them?
We're working on a number of options. You know, and the other thing that plays into this is we are going to need to replace the vehicles, and Sean and Bob are working together in that space. But the other thing is these are taking up space, and we have a premium on space at these facilities to be able to park the equipment from parks and sanitation down at recycling. So the quicker we get rid of these, the sooner we free up some space, and we're working through making sure that everything is picked up the way it needs to be until we have the replacement trucks here at the village. And Mayor, that concludes my portion of the agenda.
Thank you, Keith. And with that, we will return to public comment.
Christina Millian, 530 West Saddle River Road. Unfortunately, I'm sorry, but your Councilmember Winograd is incorrect in her public statement that the NJDEP Big Tree was not rescinded, because it was. October 17th, NJDEP wrote to the village attorney, quote, "All aspects of heritage tree status for sugar maple at 460 West Saddle River Road have been revoked, including the naming of the tree, the heritage tree certificate, removal from the New Jersey Big and Heritage Tree Registry, and plaque recommendation." I don't understand, like, if the left hand is not talking to the right. I mean, this was a letter sent, and it says removal from the New Jersey Big and Heritage Tree Registry. So I'm just wondering if we can rectify this and then put it back on the registry. That would be helpful. And maybe if we could, once you speak, talk to us about next steps there. Also, the health of the tree. In attached documents provided by the village attorney was a report from Declan Madden, the village arborist, or Madden, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce the man's last name. He noted on August 1st, 2018, that the sugar maple health assessment was good, and that is consistent with the NJDEP expert said on September 19th in his report. But the only inconsistent statement came from the village engineer in January 2023, who said in public testimony that I read on the website, quote, "In human terms, the tree was 95 years old with stage 3 or 4 cancer and might, quote, topple over tomorrow." And then the person who transcribed this public comment noted that he stopped being an arborist in 1985. And so I think it would just be helpful if we continue to either listen to our village arborist, who's obviously an expert, and or third-party independent sources such as NJDEP. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina.
Jacqueline Home, 30 Carriage Lane. I'd also like to read back again to the rescinding or the retraction of designation on the tree at Shedler. I'd like to read from the correspondence that Matthew S. Rogers, attorney at law, wrote to Joseph Bennett, Big and Heritage Tree Coordinator. And in it, it says, to demand a documented retraction of the designation and issuance of the certificate of recognition and the naming of the tree. This is also in addition to the heritage tree. And then he goes on to say, according to our records and understanding from the village expert, retained to direct the village's development of the site through the approval process, there has never been any formal or official declaration that a battle occurred at or near the property on which this tree is located. So why are we spending $35,610 on an archaeological survey on this property? And then I also question, why then the Hunter Report, obviously a very good firm, specialty in this because we've hired them again, spoke about them this evening, says, and this is an official document from a commissioned report contractor of the Village of Ridgewood, the subject property was part of the Paramus Reformed Church, approximately 500 feet south of the Sibursky Shedler property. The Paramus Reformed Church served variously as barracks, hospital, and prison, and General George Clinton camped at the church in December 1776. General George Washington established his headquarters at the Paramus Reformed Church at various times, held sessions at the court-martial of General Charles Lee at the church from July 11, 15 to 1778. A skirmish between British and Continental forces occurred at the Paramus Reformed Church in 1780. It goes on to give a whole nother list. It says, they camped in the vicinity of the Paramus Reformed Church during the Continental Army's march south in 1781. Given the proximity of the church and crossroads to the subject property, and that the property was apparently an underdeveloped part of the church's land, it is considered likely that some of these wartime activities extended on to the Sibursky Shedler property. We've also been given historic designation. It's a historic property, so it's very confusing, the conflicting statements. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie.
Good evening, Boyd A. Loving, 342 South Irving Street. Before you start the clock, I'd just like to point out down here that somebody moved the device under the podium here, and it is difficult for people who are standing at the podium to get close to the podium. I don't know why this device is sitting under here, but I would appreciate it if by the next meeting the device is moved. It looks like it's some sort of air purifier.
We'll take a look at it.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, Heather, feel free to start the clock. Boyd A. Loving, 342 South Irving Street. I am not surprised that misinformation is coming from the dais regarding this business with the big tree versus heritage tree. It's disappointing. Get it straight. How come you can't get it straight? I was at the last meeting. You've done like somewhat of a backtrack. The last meeting was intended to be a hatchet job targeted at a particular person who was involved in getting the application together. I'm sorry, that is my impression. I received phone calls when I got home that evening that, boy, somebody from the public really screwed up by doing this. Now we're learning that the person actually had the authority to do it. Something like this does not need to happen again. Get your facts straight before you start making accusatory remarks that somebody did something that they shouldn't have done. It's embarrassing. It is embarrassing to the public that something like this happened. It's embarrassing that a news article was about it when the facts are not straight yet. So before we talk about this again, can we get the facts straight, please? It is embarrassing, absolutely embarrassing. With respect to the comments about Park Mobile, my grandchildren and my daughter and her husband live in Hoboken. We visit it 3 times a week at least. We were there today. I just looked at my receipt from Park Mobile, 35 cents. 35 cents, that's what the transaction fee is in Hoboken. I brought this up when we originally went to Park Mobile. why are Ridgewood residents being charged 50 cents when somebody 17 miles away is paying 35 cents? Maybe it is volume, but as far as I'm concerned, we're better than Hoboken and should be getting a price better than Hoboken. So let us try to negotiate that down, please. 35 cents is a lot more reasonable than 50 cents, that's for sure. The other thing I like to say is, as I said last week, this whole business of putting a cell site on the roof of this building just floors me. And I thought this morning when I woke up, this is what I think of when I wake up in the morning. I thought that these 5G microcells that are going on top of telephone poles were intended to remedy a situation like we have here, that this is a dead building. Why do we have to put a complete cell site on top of the building instead of just putting a 5G microcell out in front of the building on a telephone pole? Why build the Empire State Building when you can build a shack? So just let's check this all out before we wind up with antennas all over the building, facades being cracked, people needing to traipse through the building to get up onto the roof. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Thank you very much. 35 cents. Remember that, folks. 35 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Boyd. Anyone else?
I agree with Boyd, this is a little annoying, but Cynthia O'Keefe, 542 West Saddle River Road. One thing I wanted to mention, and it is along the lines of safety, because, you know, I feel very passionate about that topic. There's a company called Outfront Media that has applied for a number of variances. It sits before the zoning board, and there's some testimony that needs to wrap up. It just comes to mind that I think it was the chair of the zoning board was here not too long ago to talk about the circular driveways, and he said, all you need to do, now I might be misquoting this, but I thought I heard him say, all you need to do is ask, and we can come before the council to discuss a certain topic. This is going to it's being proposed for 500 Route 17 South. It's a 40-foot tall, 30-foot wide digital double-sided billboard. It will be near the Park and Ride. People walk from the Park and Ride to get their cars in various parking lots. Also, people coming on Route 17 North who will be coming down West Saddle River Road, and they're supposed to deaccelerate, are going to be looking at this billboard both ways. So I would like to request that, you know, once the final testimony is given in front of the zoning board, and I guess residents have the chance to ask questions, because we haven't had a chance up until now, can this be an agenda item, you know, put before all of you? Because I think that there are thousands of people in this town that are unhappy that Ridgewood would even consider this application. It would be in a historic zone. It would be right near the Paramus Church Cemetery, actually the back of the billboard. So there's so many ramifications and things, and I would like to see it be an agenda item if possible, because I think it's going to affect not only the livelihood on the east side again, and the Shedler property, all of those neighbors looking at this brightly lit, they call it ambient light. Trust me, if you've ever driven past one, it's not ambient. So I think this is a major concern and a safety concern for this village. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Ann Loving, 342 South Irving Street. A couple of things. First of all, a great deal of thanks was given to Ms. Winograd for all the groundwork she did on the tree endeavor, and nobody thanked Ms. Millian for all the work she did. They just attempted to embarrass her. That's just ridiculous. Another thing I'd like to say is one person who spoke this evening, the gentleman in the back, was going like this with his hands and like this with his finger. The previous speaker was going like this with her hands. Why was nothing said to them? And yet Mr. De Silva was chastised and in fact almost threatened because he was wagging his finger. I don't like how that went at all. It was really bad. Thank you.
Thank you, Ann.
Fretra De Silva, 521 West Saddle River Road. In a way, I just want to echo the comments that were made by Boyd Loving. I do think we have to be very careful, the statements we make from the dais, because people, especially people outside of this room, take the words very seriously. And we've been using words that I'm not sure reflect accurately the situation. When we use phrases like meaningful implications, suffer the consequence of this incident, it seems as if the town is going to be fined, is going to suffer some kind of irrevocable harm if the tree is designated as a heritage tree, it dies, or it has, it's taken off the list. I don't know, this issue seems to have been built up. I mean, maybe if we just dealt with it and try to deal with it without kind of making it some kind of politicized issue, it could have ended up a little bit more positive and without some kind of, cloud over it, as if something ominous had happened in the town. So I think we have to be very careful how we look and we talk about these things, because the objective certainly is to make Ridgewood look good and be positive. And I think that's what the citizens have done, and I would hope that's what you want to do. So I think we have to figure out how we can do that together without making this, another major issue like this. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you, Fritcha.
Rohan De Silva, 521 West Saddle River Road. So I'm really confused because, for example, there are people on the council quoted in a Tap Into Ridgewood article that's been published. And it says it was named after a Revolutionary War figure from Pennsylvania who does not have ties to the Ridgewood community. Is that true? Did one of you say that? No answer? Oh, it's comment. So y'all don't have to answer. Okay, so according to Tap Into, that was Matt Rogers. The problem with that is that we have a book, a published book, on the history of Ridgewood. We're all aware of that, right? And it states very clearly that the Major gave his life here. So, I don't know where he was from, but he gave his life here. Does that not matter? He died 3 days after being stabbed or injured in some way. So I don't know where Tap Into is from, but they specifically stated that, and they quoted Matt Rogers. Matt Rogers didn't confirm this just now, but it's in direct conflict with what was said, what was published in the History of Ridgewood book. So one of those two things has to change. There's an inconsistency there. The other is, there was what happened last week was really an admonishment, chastising. We're all citizens here. You may have been elected officials, but we have rights just as you, and you shouldn't sit here telling me how to behave any more than I should tell you how to behave. But just because you're the dais doesn't mean you can talk down to us. And we're spoken to in a condescending manner regularly. The fact that I have to, and your behavior is terrible because I continue to say at every meeting, speak slowly, clearly, and into the mic. And Evan never does it. He speaks fast. To me, it's all mumbling. So I've asked this. I've sent a letter to the state saying that this is not a place where I feel safe and I can hear everything and participate in my civic duty. And I guess they'll get around to when they have to get around to it. But I've asked you every time, and you'll never do it. Speak slowly, clearly, into the microphone. You don't have to look at each other.
Rohan,
Speak
please
into the
finish up.
microphone. Sorry?
Please finish up. The timer went off a little while ago, so please
Okay.
finish up.
I really think that you should be kinder to your citizens. Behave in the best interests of your citizens. Praise the citizens who do good work for you. In fact, Christina Millian did something fantastic. She not only applied for this, she educated a council member and the shade tree on a new process. So can we have that at least?
Rohan, thank you very much. Anyone else from the audience? And since no one is on public comment, public-private access, I'm going to close public comment. Does anybody want to respond?
I do too. Do you want to go first, Matt?
I'll go first. I think part of the confusion that may be there, and I'm only assuming that okay, I'll tell you. I think part of the confusion is that the name of the registry where big and heritage trees get registered in the state is called the Big and Heritage Tree Registry. So they couple them for the registry because they keep them under the same register. But they are separate applications. One of the things that was not said in the letter that came from Joseph Bennett on October 17th was what he said earlier than that. He says in his letter that since the ROA, which is the right of access for the Village of Ridgewood Sugar Maple was never signed by the Village of Ridgewood, all aspects of heritage tree status for the sugar maple, and gives the address 460 West Saddle River Road, have been revoked. Doesn't say anything about big tree status. Then he says that has been revoked, including the naming of the tree, the heritage tree certificate, and its removal from the New Jersey Big and Heritage Tree Registry. So the name of the registry is Big and Heritage Tree Registry, but his letter is very clear, there's no confusion. He just says that it's the status and revoking, including the name of the tree, a heritage tree. Doesn't say anything about big tree. So I think there's a mix-up with regard to the fact that the registry where all the trees are registered is called Big and Heritage Tree Registry. But his letter is very clear that what he revoked was only the heritage tree status. And the only thing I can say, there was a question about what I said last week. It's on the record. You can look at it to see if it's there and go from there.
Sure. So I basically was going to echo what Matt said. At no point, and Christina, we have been on multiple emails, and I feel that even my reply back to NJDP, I was trying to sort things out, and I do think the big tree was a good job. I was excited about it. I followed up about it. I'm still excited about the big tree status. I think that when it came in on Sunday, I asked neighbors and the NJDEP concurrent questions about heritage, and I only received a reply to all those questions from NJDEP. So similar to what Matt said, the status of heritage has been revoked, but big tree still remains, and that's a good thing. And, you know, I do take this seriously. I think, thank you. I'm excited about the program. I think Shade Tree's excited about the program. Again, I'm slightly disadvantaged because I don't have immediate access, but the report that Declan issued and the comments from Chris and the NJDEP record are 4 years apart. And what I would like to do, to be clear, is you have arborists, and we see this a lot with shade trees, you have different tree opinions. Where I feel the missed opportunity was DEP has an arborist, and so did we. So when they came, what I would have loved was for them to have met together, which is why he's coming back tomorrow, because we want to start this program, and I think it would be beneficial. With respect to the history, I just want to belabor this because all our issues get complicated. Shedler is historic for criteria C only. Every nomination prior to, can you hear me, Rohan? Okay. Shedler is historic on the registry for criteria C only. So from what I've learned since being on here and going through the nomination, and I feel everybody on the council, you could be a historic person, you could be a historic incident, or C, historic architecture. The only reason, like the only technical reason on the actual application that got Ridgewood and Shedler on there is criteria C. Prior councils, there's no disputing that. That's what moved it forward. So, you know, clearly it's close to a local historical place. Everybody knows the old Paramus Church is historic. It's on the National Registry because of the incident there. But Shedler is only for architecture. So I think when we go out into the community, people think historic means incident 100% of the time. Shedler's nomination and its place on the registry is for architecture. So the big issue with the tree, why the heritage tree, there is an existing situation going on, and if anybody had replied back to me from the neighborhood, I want to be sincere with you, I would have answered any of these questions. I wrote you all back. I was instantly concerned with what was going on. There is a tree that's being disputed in Paramus right now, and it can have legal implications as the property moves on. It's a 300-year tree. It's tied up in something. So we want to make sure before we do this, we understand it. And lastly, someone asked why we were running a $35,000 survey. To me, I'm doing that because neighbors wanted it, and I feel that it will help explore what happened there. And so the $35,000 for the archaeological study, when I met with the neighbors, and I think it's a good thing. The reason I voted yes was because I believe the neighborhood wanted it. So I hope that answers it. I want to say again, because I've been very optimistic about this, when you get the NJDEP map, it's sort of beyond belief that Ridgewood's not on it. Honoring big trees, which do their job, is important. Big trees are going to be referenced in our new tree protection ordinance, because to take down an oak and replace it with a dogwood, the equivalent isn't the same. So I think everybody up here believes in big trees. The revocation was only for the heritage tree. However, that tree's name, in getting our facts straight, it's under the Big Tree and Heritage Project. So I'm hoping you guys can kind of nod and say that somewhat makes sense. And if you have questions, I would welcome a reply back to the original email with DEP that I sent on that Sunday. I'm available for all these discussions off this dais. It's a terrible way to have a conversation, and I'm not blaming anybody, but everybody on that email knew on that Sunday I was totally stunned, and nobody offered me any information except for NJDEP. And do I wish it had been different? Yes, but I think this is an opportunity for us to move forward.
Mayor, through you. Mr. Loving, you're 100% correct. This is an embarrassing situation. You want to know why it was embarrassing? It was embarrassing because one of the two individuals who submitted the application represented that my signature was on a document that was never signed. Not only was it never signed, it was never presented to me by the DEP to be signed. Yet the DEP decided to process that application as submitted without the right of access agreement. Now, as someone who's only worked here since the summer, that was embarrassing for me, because I had council members calling me, asking me if that document was signed, when in fact it was not, because they had an application in front of them that indicated it was. That is what caused the embarrassing situation relative to this designation. Ms. Melian, we've communicated about this. I commend people for wanting to pursue this dedication. That's why it's made available through the Department of Environmental Protection, so that we can acknowledge these types of historic and large trees throughout the state of New Jersey. But I will not have someone represent to a state agency that I signed a government document that I did not sign. That is the source of the embarrassment here. To Ms. O'Keefe, with regard to the Board of Adjustment application for the billboard, the Board of Adjustment is a quasi-judicial board. When an applicant sets a hearing and makes an application before the board is responsible for either granting or denying relief from existing zoning laws within the village. The council cannot opine on that because it is a quasi-judicial board. So there is no mechanism in the law for it to come to a council agenda regardless of the decision that the Board of Adjustment makes in this particular matter. So I hope that clarifies the process for you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you both. I have a couple of comments. And again, one was just to further emphasize what Keith said, Cynthia, about the quasi-judicial nature of the Zoning Board of Adjustment. We are not allowed to call, comment publicly because we appoint these people. And so it would send a chilling effect, even if we spoke to them about these things. The planning board is different. So it cannot, even if we wanted it to, come here for us to get involved in that. But again, you were asking. That's that. The other thing I wanted to comment on, and again, Boyd, you raised this, and I think, Fretcher, you raised this. I want to be abundantly clear. There were, as was said before, there were 2 applications filed. One was Christina's and one was another person's. And by the way, we didn't mention anyone's names last week, but since you brought it up, yours specifically said that a right of access was not granted. It was the other person who filed the application that said that it was. And it said that it was in Keith's name. So again, no one is disparaging you for that problem. And that was really the main focus of what's going on here. Again, whether it was done, how it was done, that's really the key, is saying that that the village gave its authority. Finally, Rohan, I have many times, and I do the very best I can to make sure that this council speaks loudly enough and into the microphone enough so that you can hear. I am as sensitive as I can be, and I've said it many times at many meetings and asked my fellow council, everyone on the dais. I'm doing the best I can. I know they are. It's unfortunate. Please, just a moment. It's our microphone system requires us to speak. You see me when you don't have trouble hearing me because I always lean in. And sometimes when we are discussing things, and you see it at that microphone, everyone is not in that habit. So we're doing the best we can. I promise we're going to keep trying as hard as we can, all of us. So with that...
Mayor, if I could just make one more comment.
Yes.
I've been here almost 4 months. And the common theme that I've heard of all these council meetings is that the public wants things to be done right here in this village. Well, this is an example. This application was an example of something that wasn't done right. And I just hope that we can all collectively be consistent about following the rules now and in the future.
Thank you. Excuse me. Public comment is over. And so, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Now, I have a closed session resolution.
Oh,
Be it
there you go.
resolved by the Village Council of the Village of Ridgewood that the Village Council meet in closed session on November 1st, 2023 at 7:30 PM or as soon thereafter, as the matter on the agenda can be reached. And that said closed session will be held in the fourth floor caucus room of the Ridgewood Village Hall, 131 North Maple Avenue, Ridgewood, New Jersey. And be it further resolved that the matters to be discussed in closed session are limited to legal matters to include the town garage and personnel matters to include village historian. These matters are allowable under NJSA 10:4-12 et sec, and be it further resolved that the minutes of this meeting shall be made available to the general public when such matter shall have been deemed completed by resolution of the village council. May I have a motion?
So moved.
Need a second. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you.